Well, welcome to this episode of Danzan Documents. I'm your host, Professor George Arrington of Danzan.com, and I wanted to do this episode with the JWP word processor, Japanese word processor that I have, so that I could show you a few things and include some of the kanji with the presentation. So the topic, as you saw for this episode, is, I'll scroll down here, is what was the professor's name? Now this may sound like a silly question, but I think that after you watch this episode, you may have some questions of your own. But let's go ahead and get started with it. Well, as we've all of us who have studied Danzan-Ryu know, one of the first things we learned was that the founder of the system was named, what was it? Henry Seishiro Okazaki. And we just kind of said, oh, okay, that was his name. And we see a couple of interesting things with this. First of all, he has a Western-sounding name at the beginning, Henry, and then he has this name, Seishiro Okazaki. Now, it is true that he was born, his last name was Okazaki. Let me write that in here. To the alphanumeric here and go Okazaki. And in Eastern tradition, Japanese tradition, you receive the family name first and then the given name second. And his given name is Seishiro. So, and at some point, I believe it was in the late 1920s. I'm not completely sure about this, but I think sometime in the 1920s, he adopted the Western name Henry. So people would call him Henry, I guess, although for all of his life they called him the professor. So anyway, and we'll get into a little bit of that maybe later. So what is the kanji for his name? Well, Okazaki, like this. Oops, let's put it into kanji mode. Oka, Saki, and convert that into the kanji, and you'll see that it says Okazaki. Okay, that's what Okazaki looks like. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting. His given name was Seishiro, and if you look at some of the documents, and I have several documents here we'll take a look at. The first one, and these aren't in any particular sequence, but the first one we'll look at is a famous picture that was given to me by Steve Vizek. This is Professor Okazaki right here. And this is Steve Vizek upon the receipt of his Mokuroku, or catalog scroll, right there. That's the catalog scroll. And the interesting thing about this picture is that, and there were lots of these kinds of portraits made with the professor and the student receiving their diploma or their scroll. And you can tell that this is the house on Hotel Street because that's what it looked like back in the 1940s. This one was taken in May of 1941. But the interesting thing about this photograph is that it was hand-signed by Professor Okazaki. And I'm going to scroll up a little bit here so we can see it. And let me move the picture up just a smidge there. Okay. And we can see Okazaki. Here's Oka, and Zaki right here, right there, same thing. So then we have his given name of Seishiro, and that's what that looks like. Now I'm gonna put this behind our screen here for a moment. We'll come back to that in just a moment, but Seishiro. Let me write this out in kana first. Seishiro, and it's a long O sound, so we put in the u there, the extra u there. So what does this name look like? Well, the say, and I'll flip back to the picture in a second here. Say looks like this one here, and then the she looks like this one here, and the ro looks like this one right here. Okay. Now you may have noticed that I had to switch from one to another, and there's a reason for that, which you'll see in a moment here. But that is the name that is on that photograph. Let me pull up the photograph one more time. And it's a little bit difficult to read, but I think you can make it out. That here is this character right here, which is this character right here, which is say. It's also pronounced hoshi, which means a star, like a star up in the sky. Anyway, say, she, that one. There we go. That one said looks pretty much like it. And then the ro, which is this part here, is this little part right here, and then to the right, this part right here, which actually means moon, is right there. So that's sei shi ro. And then we have other documents that confirm this, and I'll pull one of these up. Let me pull up this. Oops, where did we go? Hang on one second. Technical difficulties. There we go. Pull this one up. And this one is not handwritten by Professor Okazaki. This was done by someone who was a little better calligrapher than the professor was, maybe. This is the Kaiden show, again, of Steve Bizek. This was issued in 1948, and I have a video that you've probably seen already on this particular document. But we can see here Okazaki, sei, there's a sei, she, there's a she, and ro, right there, there's a ro. So sei shiro. So this is the name that he went by, at least from 1941 on, and actually earlier than that, in the 30s, he used this name. Okay. Now, where do we have a disconnect? Well, we find a little bit of a disconnect when we look at, and I'm going to pull this document back up. We get a little bit of a disconnect when we look at the book that was written by Professor Okazaki in the 1920s, or 1929 specifically, and that is this one right here. This is the Science of Self-Defense for Girls and Women, and in the book, he writes his name. He signs this picture of himself as Okazaki. Oka, there's the Oka right there. Zaki, there's the Zaki right there. And then sei shiro right there. And you see that it doesn't quite look the same as this one. Maybe a little bit similar on this last character, but not quite the same. And in fact, it isn't the same. It is this name here. Sei, and this is what I was correcting earlier, or changing. The sei in the book is this name here. Okay, sei, she, in this case, was not that one, but was that one. And that one, for those of you who may know a little Japanese, is the number 4. Okay. And then the ro, R-O-U, is not that one, but is that one. Okay. So it has a little flag as opposed to the moon here. That's what that is. Looks like a banner or a flag. So this is the name that he used prior to the 1930s, the late 1930s or mid 1930s, whenever he started using this name. Which again, I'm not sure of the date of that, but at least in 1929 he used this. Now, an interesting side note is that if you go and visit the Nico Sanatorium in Honolulu, there's a large wooden statue of the professor that is labeled with this name, the earlier Seishiro, and not this name. So that's an interesting point. Okay, so that's a little bit about the background of his name. But one other interesting thing, and I don't need to use the JWP for this, and that is what was his last name? And his last name, as we see, is Okazaki. But as you might know, he came into Hawaii in 1906 on the USS China, or on the SS China steamship, and the log of that steamship shows something just a smidge different than what we see here. Let me just show you that log. This is the log from the SS China, and oops, let me pull that back up. Alrighty, there you go. And it says list or manifest of alien passengers for the U.S. immigration officer at port of arrival. And it says here SS China. Actually, I have a better picture of this. Let me just pull that up briefly here. There we go. And it says SS China sailing from Yokohama, September. I think that's 14. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. It doesn't come up very well. Maybe it's first. I'm not certain what that particular day is. 1906, arriving at port of Honolulu, September 10th, 1906. Okay, so it must have been like September 1st or something like that. So there is the log of, or the immigration form for that. Now, what becomes very interesting is that when we look at the names on this manifest, we find a name right here that says Seishiro Akaraki. Okay, and it matches the birth dates of Professor Okazaki, and it also matches the place where he was born in Fukushima, although they say Fukushima here, and Kakeda Machi, which is the town of Kakeda, where he was born. So it matches that. It matches his age, and it matches his first name, sort of, except say Shiro, I guess. But this Akaraki is the problem. Okay, and but I can even show you a closer picture of that right here. And it says Seishiro Akaraki right there. And he was admitted to the Honolulu, although it looks like the guy after him was suspected trachoma, debarred, deported, so that guy didn't make it. But Akaraki or Okazaki made it in. The reason I bring this up is that when World War II was going on and he was arrested under the name of Akaraki and sent to a camp up in the mountains of Honolulu, or of Oahu, called Honouliuli. And that was outlined in my latest book, Danzan-Ryu Essentials. But anyway, just a couple of interesting, brief historical notes about Professor Okazaki. And one last personal note, and that is that the name that we give to our founder of Professor Okazaki has, in recent days, been modified by several groups as calling him Master Okazaki. And it's my personal opinion that this is not correct, that he would not have called himself Master Okazaki. The term Professor Okazaki was given to him not as a title from a university or a rank, but more as a term of endearment. So when people use this term Master Okazaki, um, to me it is not it's not correct, and it's my um, opinion that it should not be used in that way. Anyway, that's all for today, and we'll see you next time.
All these different coordination tricks, different things that required balance, required you to have some coordination or develop some coordination as a result of the practice.
At the time, Jim was a 3rd degree brown, Mike was a 2nd degree brown, doing amazing things, and you walk out on the mat and you realize that you know nothing, you start from scratch.
And it helps you center and focus, but also within it deeper, it kind of starts to pop your adrenal gland so that you end up with a little more power than you really thought you had. In that area, that was a safe place, a place where they could go, be, grow.
It was all very challenging because you were learning a different way of moving.
We did it all without any type of mat at all. Full osotogari, everything right on the hardwood floor, and we have that on film.